On Point, hosted by Peter Van Aardrijk. Conversations with interesting and informative experts on technology, branding, culture, social media marketing, and other great topics.
Hello again, everybody. Peter Van Aardrijk, your host for On Point, brought to you by our good friends at Wells Media, which includes Carrier Management, Insurance Journal, and other fine publications. Our guest today is Peter Anderson, the president of Anderson Musical Instrument Insurance Solutions, program administrator covering musical instruments, equipment, and accessories from all around the world. It's a direct-to-consumer business and also some business via brokers as well. You can see more at anderson-group.com, anderson-group.com. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter.
I know you're down in Florida now. Where are you from originally?
I am actually a seventh-generation native of Marshfield, Massachusetts, about halfway between Boston and Plymouth. And my family's been there since just a few years after the Mayflower landing.
Oh, man. So what did they say when you went down to Florida with the company?
You know, regrettably, Florida, I love the temperatures here and all that, the politics not so much, but really I chased myself down here about now on 19, 20 years ago because I needed sunlight in the wintertime, and I was really feeling an abandonment of sunlight in the Great White North. And I have reveled in life in Florida. As far as moving the business, we maintained our Massachusetts phone number. But we've been here now. I moved the company in 2008. When I sold my retail business to a large bank-owned agency in Massachusetts at that time, keeping just the musical instrument niche.
Yeah, when I first met you, you were a retail agent, the classic independent agent. I think you had a couple of locations, if I'm not mistaken. And you're also either becoming chair or was the chair of the Applied Systems Client Network, the Applied Systems User Group. So you were in the mix as a classic, retail agency and working on technology for the betterment of your fellow agents. And of course, we can get into all about the technology you're thinking about today or moving to. But there's such an interesting career story here, Peter. And I've been fortunate to meet a lot of agents like you over the years who have fell in love with a thing that had nothing to do with insurance, collector cars, for example. For you, it was music. And then the next thing you know, they're insuring that love and their fellow, car drivers or musicians. So how did you get to where you are today? It's so cool. I love it.
Well, it all started, my family was a Chrysler Plymouth dealer in Marshfield, Massachusetts. And during the summers, I sold a car to a life insurance agent. And I really knew that selling automobiles was not something I wanted to spend my life doing because they break down, and I didn't want to be getting these calls. Plus, unlike my brother who had all the skills, about the only thing I could do was type. So I couldn't fix anything on cars, and I didn't want to get the calls. And I sold a car to this life insurance agent at Home Life. I said, I think I can do that. I got a life license back in, 50 years ago now, 1975. And started with Home Life, and I was a life insurance agent for 5 years. I had qualified for $1 Million Round Table and all of that, had some successes. But I really quickly started to see that for me, it didn't fit my model as to how I could build an asset. So I started getting involved in the property casualty business in 1980, actually, where I started venturing in and moving away from the life lines into the property casualty lines.
Yeah.
I was a music major that needed a day job, as the saying goes. I quickly realized that while I was a big fish in a small pond in Marshfield, Massachusetts, where I grew up. I had qualified I started singing when I was 4 years old in local church. I was mentored by the music director in the Marshfield school system, who was also the music director at the community church where I was a member. And I was a boy soprano, and I started soloing from the age of 4 in church services. And from there, Bert Calgo by name started mentoring me and started developing my skills, gave me voice lessons, also started teaching me how to play some of the instruments. I ended up playing all the brass instruments throughout my primary and high school career time frame, and also attended a number of music festivals, actually all of them, whether it be a regional district festival or an all-state or all New England and all Eastern. And I did that for each of my 4 years in the high school system. And I was then romanced by a music director from Bowling Green State University, Ivan Tressler by name, and then sort of just a little bit south of Toledo. And I was offered a scholarship to come be part of the music department there. So that's officially massaged my ego. I really didn't fit in Ohio. At the time, I was in a flaming romance with my latest, and between 3.2 beer and Stroh's beer at the time, and being 1,500 miles away didn't fit well with me. But really, the whole thing started in the music school, where I started seeing people that were equally as good as I was, but they were obsessed with this, and they're walking around the hallways doing solfege, and the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and vocalizing with scarves around their necks so they don't get a cold, and on it went.
Yeah.
And I say, I really didn't fit. This was not what I had bargained for. I love music. I was good at it. I wasn't good enough to be able to make the kind of money that would support my vices, which are considerable. Whether it be travel or some of the other aviation, motorcycles, and other things that I have all scratched my itches, if you will, over the years. So I really started, 1 year I spent in Bowling Green, and then I took a year off, traveled throughout Europe for several months. And that was really where I started to get my love of travel, and also the need to make some money. And so I changed for a dual major at the time, and I went into both business and music. And that's where I finished school in both the University of New Hampshire, Durham, New Hampshire, graduating in, 51 years ago. And you're making me feel old here in this conversation. I'm an age denier, but in any case, I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. And then you found your way into the Boston Symphony. What is, I may not even be saying that right, because it was singing there too, right?
Yes. In 1980, I started to decide that I really wanted to get in the property casualty business. I started researching automation. I thought I had it all knocked with a compact Despro 40 megabyte hard drive and Stargate board and Kimtron Amber terminals. And I figured I have got the whole thing slayed here. And that's how I started my automation at the time. And I really quickly realized how vital it was for me to be able to multiply myself, working smarter, not harder. So the automation became a real driver. But in the same time, because I was I was better than average, but not good enough, I found out the Boston Symphony was a friend of mine from Marshfield, auditioned and made it into the Boston Symphony Tanglewood Festival chorus back in 1980. And I said, I can do that. And I went and auditioned, and I got in. And my first concert was October of 1981 on Boston Commons, singing Beethoven's Ninth, while my wife was pregnant and delivering our second child. And while she was in labor, I was on the Boston Common with 250,000 people singing Beethoven's Ninth. That's where the whole thing started. I stayed with the Boston Symphony through 2006, traveling all around the world and and with world-class musicians, soloists, conductors, for literally 25 years, where we would spend the summers in Tanglewood and the summer home of the Boston Symphony, and then we would be touring in the off season. And it's an experience that I dearly miss. I don't miss so much the memorization, because everything we did had to be memorized. I don't miss having to audition annually to re-qualify for my position, but I did that. The very exacting standards with the quality of the Boston Symphony. It's a world-class organization, and one that I was very proud to be associated with. During that time, it was about now 9 years later, I was approached in January by one of the musicians, cellist in the Boston Symphony, as I was exiting the stage for a break in the rehearsal. I think it was like a Monday or Tuesday morning, whatever it was. And Bob Ripley asked me, do you insure musical instruments? And I said, sure. And this was January in Mass Ave and Huntington Ave in Boston, and no coat. And back in the day, we used to have to take a coin, like maybe a quarter, and take it to a phone where you put a quarter in or money in, and you could actually call someone. Things have changed a little bit in those times. Yeah. I was out at a payphone in Huntington Ave, calling my underwriter, Joe Fagan at Temper at the time, and I said, Joe, can we insure musical instruments? He said, yes. In fact, I left the Hartford 6 months earlier, and I insured the Boston Symphony. And during that time, he said that. I said, well, thank you very much for that. And I went back and met with the players committee of the orchestra. And 2 months later, we wrote our first niche account with ensuring the members and staff of the Boston Symphony. Not a bad way to start a niche. And from there, it developed. It followed with the Utah Symphony with former Boston Symphony member who was the music director. And also, actually, he was the principal violin player too. First section, Joe Silverstein. I found out about that I was insuring his instruments through the Boston Symphony, and I was invited to insure the Utah Symphony. And from there, a niche really began to develop.
That's really cool. You mentioned you learned to play all the brass instruments, but for some reason, which you'll explain to me and to our listeners, your favorite instrument is the tuba.
Well,
it's not exactly a common favorite.
no, but it's got a ton of personality. And I'll tell you, every time we're endorsed by the International Tuba and Euphonium Association, and I just love seeing applications come in from their members, particularly the extent of females that are playing the tuba, which I think is so cool. It takes an extraordinary person, both have the breath to be able to maintain the proper sound on the tuba, as well as the kind of volume that it can generate. And to see some of these women that may be, I don't even know, 100 pounds or 120 pounds soaking wet, are able to manipulate and manage that instrument, I just am in awe with that. But I love the personality of the tuba. Trombone, it started with trumpet, but then, as often is the case, music directors in the various school programs say, well, we have too many trumpets. Everyone wants to play trumpet. We want you to play trombone. So I said, fine. And I started playing trombone. My girlfriend at the time, later to be my wife of 40 some odd years, was playing first flute. So this was it was a Shakespearean experience here. There she is from across from me as in the first position of the flute, and I was playing first trombone. And that's where I ended up playing most of my days in high school. And I love the trombone, the slide trombone. And during that time, I started picking up baritone and tuba as well.
Yeah.
And I needed to fill in. And I love the differences of, well, you need quite an embouchure to play a tuba. And it's very different from playing a trumpet. I could never play a trumpet after my chops got adapted to trombone and tuba. But the instrument has just got a ton of personality. And being a bass in singing, voice, it all fit.
Yeah. How does that voice sound? Can you still rattle out a couple of lines for us?
No, and I'm not going to do that right now because I'm also dealing with a cold.
All right. Well,
So
all right. Next time we'll have to get. You mentioned that the first. I think you said first chair. That's kind of like the seat of honor in a symphony, right? Where you're actually kind of a lead to everyone else in that section. Is that right?
That's correct. Section leader. Yes.
Section leader.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. You know what? I like the oboe. I think the oboe is an underrated instrument. I like the sound of the oboe, and you hear a lot of it. I over the years and through the centuries, the oboe kind of has maintained that kind of cool. The oboe's like, to me, the cool kid in the room.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, that would be my alternate fallback, oboe and bassoon. If you go to Peer Gynt and think about some of the songs that are done in Peer Gynt, it was really, it's got such a personality in and of itself and a haunting tone that you can, the melodies and the passages that you can shape with an oboe and bassoon are something very special about that. I never played a double reed. I love insuring them. Mm-hmm. And I love working with the members of the International Double Reed Society and working in that niche as well. It's got it's a charming instrument, and double reeds, frankly, all the instruments I love, and being able to mix my knowledge of insurance with these instruments and musicians, and also having talk the talk and walk the walk in the music world, it was a natural fit for me to be able to really develop this niche in a way that some would only aspire to. But I was able to do it based on a little bit of luck and also a lot of sweat during the time building this niche and developing it in the early years. We work on raving fans and brand recognition. It's all about the brand. It's like the song, it's all about the bass. Well, it's all about the brand.
There's the voice. Yeah, and I think that passion for protecting the musician's passion, you know, their instruments and their equipment and stuff is what it's at the core of what you're doing. Do you think, I mean, most consumers really don't know what insurance they have, what they don't have, what risks they're facing, et cetera. I imagine most musicians don't really fully understand what's entailed. So what do they most often misunderstand, your customers, about insuring their stuff?
Relying on their homeowner's policy to insure instruments would be the number one. Also pay for play and how that can invalidate coverage with a typical personal lines rider or a homeowner's policy. Those would be the biggest, and that's our biggest question and our biggest promotion on every page on our website is really talking about homeowners is not the solution, educating people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have been involved as an insurance agent for 25 years. I sold home, auto, business, health, and with success. But it wasn't really feeding my passion, and that passion was music. Because for me, I get emotional when I listen, when I perform, when I sing, when I listen to pieces. It's a very stirring opportunity for me to be able to get involved. Sometimes I need to remind myself that I'm not the only one in the house when I'm playing on my considerable speakers, where I'm playing things while I'm working sometimes. And I have a varied taste, whether it go from reggae to oratorio or opera. I love all the disciplines and the different times of music, not so much Renaissance period, but the others. So for me, it was just a way for me to be able to leverage my knowledge in insurance, the needs of of people and transporting instruments, how to best manage that risk. And the most important thing was I needed to make ourselves different. So I created the Anderson Signature Musical Instrument Coverage Form, which we've been working with now since 2005, 1995, pardon me. So it's been a long time that we've had our manuscripted form that has been accepted by the various carriers that we've used. We've been with 4 major carriers over the 35 years, most recently since 2011 with Hamilton Insurance.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go back to a couple of things. Homeowners is not the solution. I got that one. But then you said pay to play. What happens when, so people pay a premium to perform and they think can you explain a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. It's, people are under the mistaken impression that if they receive payment for their performance, that they're covered and they can take their whatever out and get a little pay for what they're doing and expect that if something happens while they are in transport or at the event, they think that's going to be covered, and it's not. There are some carriers that will insure instruments, understanding that there is a commercial aspect to it, and they charge a bit more money. But the problem is that getting the valuations of those instruments is another real pitfall on the homeowners policy, because they treat this as an ACV sort of exposure, and they try to depreciate instruments where, in fact, most of them increase in value annually. So in our case, we write a stated value policy. So when people have a claim, the valuation that we accept at time of submission is the value, unless they endorse and increase it later. But that will be the value if the worst happens.
And these things are like, I was pretty stunned when I learned some of what these things cost or what the stated values are. Can you give a couple examples there? I mean, it must be.
Sure. The string worlds, we routinely will see values in the 6 figures. We can see violin bows that are valued over $100,000. Many bows are in high 5 figures. Violin bows, bass bows, viola bows. So this is areas where you have to really know what you're talking about, what you're doing, how to deal with aridity and excess dryness and humidity, how to protect them in shipment, et cetera, et cetera. So for all of these reasons, we needed to craft a coverage form that affords coverage for this, and then also make sure that we are underwriting this coverage properly, because we are collecting a fraction of a penny to pay $1 in claims, and we cannot do that all day long if we're paying claims and stay in business. And I am very proud to say that over 35 years, our lifetime loss ratio is 20%. 20 to 21% is our year over year average loss ratio, which in most cases is commendable, unless you're a bond agent, where I never could really understand how to sell bonds. But their loss ratios can go track lower. But to have a property casualty book of business that's reporting those kind of profits is something that is not a tough sell to take to an insurance company with a book of business.
Yeah. The other thing I want to go back to, you said something like the Renaissance music. Is that like the chamber music?
Oh, now harpsichords may play a role in that. I have harpsichord issues. Really don't like them.
Keyboard, right? Or no?
It's a quill. It's a piano that looks like a piano, but it's, instead of having a hammer that hits a string, it's got quills that pluck strings. Literal quills. I'm just not a big fan of the sound of the harpsichord. If there are any harpsichord aficionados, and we insure a lot of them, yeah, the Renaissance music is just not my style. I'm really from the Romantic period. I like something with a lot of substance. To me, you give me a Mahler symphony or an oratorio, and I can really throw myself at that. Oh, yeah, Beethoven and the like, but then in the classical period. But the Romantic period for me is probably my most favorite to perform. The music is rich and tonal, and you can really shape it in ways that make a performance very unique.
Yeah. So with this question, back to insurance, no disrespect to the traditional carriers listening out there, but do you have, if you look at the broader landscape of what you're doing and your fellow program administrators are doing in the marketplace, I know you're involved in target markets and other associations, and
yes,
do you have a sense that the traditional carriers can make it through this shift or with technology, or do you feel like there's other ways in the future that the way you distribute could be, be insured, the paper could look different in the future? I'm just spitballing this. I really don't know, but
I had some comments on that.
Yeah.
We have been individually underwriting instruments now for 35 years. And as of September 1st of 2025, just 30 days ago, we launched an automated quote, rate, pay, bind, and issue policy real time without being touched by human hands. So we've moved over from individual underwriting on certain classes of business to class underwriting, where we have such considerable experience underwriting the class musical instruments that we are prepared to take some hits on losses, perhaps for maybe an instrument that is overvalued. And as you may recall, I mentioned we insure stated value. So if the worst happens, and if we're not careful, we could be creating a problem where we're making it health feeding and a potential claim that enriches someone rather than just restores their value. So from that standpoint, I do know that we are taking some risks, but we've built underwriting guardrails based on the instrument type, based on our experience. I have 15 years of losses that we have now analyzing through AI, where we are able to confirm our experience and also validate the underwriting guardrails that we need to put into place. My goal is to try to eventually channel about 50%, half of our business, through the entire process on a real-time basis without ever hitting a human, including policy production. And we're doing that today, right now. And that's the exciting thing about technology. I probably should go back on the technology thing, because this is something that I really drank this Kool-Aid very early on in my career. And as I mentioned, we started out with a Compact Desk Pro and a Kimtron terminal back in 1983. And I thought I had arrived. We researched not only vendors for hardware, but also software vendors, which were few and far between at the time. We became an early adopter of Applied Systems. They were our database from 1984. We were one of the early adopters of Applied Systems when they were working out of Bob Eustace's home and swimming pool. And I think the total staff at Applied Systems at the time may have been around 20 people. And we went on board with them in early 1984. And we said goodbye to Applied in 2019 for reasons that really, we're all about the technology and our model, because we are not working like a traditional insurance agent works. And I needed more technology and more flexibility to be able to respond to the needs. And so we ended up on a Salesforce platform back in 2019, which really has helped us shape the current technology path that we're on now.
Yeah. So 83. So I think in December of 82, Time Magazine had a computer as quote Man of the Year on their cover. And Bill Gates was talking about there'd be a computer in every home and office. People were scratching their heads saying, what the heck are you talking about?
Yep.
And in 83, the president of the Big I at the time went around the country in a stump speech saying, we're going to be paper free in 83.
Yeah.
Insurance will be, it didn't happen, people were working towards it. It didn't happen 83, 93, 03, 13, 23. But it sounds like you're getting there with this coverage line anyway.
We're there. We're not getting there. We've arrived. Mm-hmm. And that's the exciting part for us to be able to see a half a dozen or 10 or more new policies being generated every day of the year.
Yeah.
365 days a year from people that have come to our website, recognizing our brand, recognizing our reputation and our product and pricing. We are full disclosure on our website as to, we put everything out there. We have our policy forms, we have our rates and such. So there's no mystery to what we're doing here. We don't share our underwriting guidelines there, but we do share the pricing. And that to me is super exciting, because I can see where my goal here is to potentially, I plan on becoming the most significant player in this space for musical instrument insurance, not only in the US, but globally, partnering with some folks in London. And I'm very excited about that, because to see this brand come from where it is now, which is far beyond anything I would have ever projected when I started this standalone niche on June 1st, 2008, when I sold my Main Street USA agency to Eastern Insurance at the time in Massachusetts, and I was going to semi-retire and build this musical instrument niche. I really had a conundrum here. How could I run a business that at that time was just around $180,000 in total revenue and commission, not premium, but commission and policy fees, and to take that to where we're at today, which is, we've quadrupled, no, better than that. I mean, we're currently in the $1 million, $1.5 million range right now, on the way to 3 million, on the way to 5 and 10 million. We're over 3 million, in premium, heading to 5 and 10 million. And I see that on my sites within the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to you once. You had gotten off a cruise ship, because at the time you were doing a lot of cruising around the world. And he said, I'm living the dream, man. I'm checking my BlackBerry and I'm writing business from my BlackBerry.
I did that for 5 years. I traveled the world. My wife was a nurse on board one of the cruise lines. We're running the medical department, and I was a spouse on board, or SOB, as I was referred to. And I would travel up to 3 months at a time on the ship, and then 3 months off. When I would come back, my staff, or what I refer to the responsible adults in this mix, would take care of things in between and get into the weeds. And I was dealing with generating the business and working on the brand and the marketing and such, and underwriting too. And we had a platform built through Atlassian using a software developer's tool called Jira. And that became our service desk. And that's how we were managing the sales process. We have just recently moved that entire process into Salesforce as of February 1st of this year. So now we're on a single platform, and I'm very pleased about that.
Mm-hmm.
Have a single focus on managing both the sales and service noise, as I refer to it, because we've got about 18,000 insureds at this point, and there's a lot of noise with that. So we really have to work smart on how we manage this process, because if we had all these people calling us all day long, that would be a problem. So we really need to work as heavily as we can in the email world, and my staff, all of whom are remote, and they work out of their home offices around the United States, overseas in London. We also have someone in Morocco, and people in Canada. So that's where our staff is based, Massachusetts. so that we are working, everyone is working without really seeing it. We don't have an office, a traditional office in that regard, but everyone is in touch with real-time chat and such. And we also do audio calls when necessary to link people together so they all can stay in touch with their folks on virtual meetings and virtual video meetings as well.
Yeah. Peter, you have your roots as a traditional retail agent. How does the online experience match with that quote human touch, the people side? Is it, you mentioned brand, you mentioned transparency, everything's happening without a human. How do you feel that works?
That's a great question. My lead underwriter lives vicariously through all of our applicants, and she spends time on YouTube and other areas getting to know these people. We start having email exchanges with them. We really become personally attached to our insureds. We go to musical instrument shows where we get to meet people in person. We first started our first show in 2009 at the NAM show, the National Association of Music Merchants in Anaheim, California, where at the time about 110,000 people, industry people, show up in Anaheim for 4 or 5 days in over a couple 100,000 square feet of space. And we would have a booth there talking about insurance. And for all the times that I'd been to a state fair or something with my booth for Anderson Insurance selling home and auto, people would never make eye contact. Let's just be honest. So they would just walk by the booth, making sure they don't look at us and make eye contact, even if they wanted to ask a question. But when I put up a musical instrument booth, people come by and they say, "This is so cool. I didn't know this was a thing. I want to get this. How does this work?" And so we would get into these conversations with folks, and this became a real effective way for us to build our brand. People were actually excited about talking about insurance. And I don't know what people are smoking, drinking, what have you, but insurance is not generally a topic that people get excited about unless they're in the business. So from that standpoint, this became where we were protecting someone's passion. And in some cases, these people have real problems because they don't know when to stop, and they're adding to their collections. I've seen pictures of homes with guitars in the living room, 50 to 100 guitars displayed in their living room. And I mean, we have people that are buying things that their spouses aren't aware of. They're avid collectors and avid enthusiasts. And I mean, it's just a very cool niche for us to work in. And I get a chance to meet with these people in person when I'm at these shows. Now we specialize more on specific musician associations. We have about 12 that endorse us, and we have member benefit structured coverage and rating for members of these musician associations. And in the most recent years, we'll go to a harp insurance show or a flute insurance. My developers thought I was saying food insurance, and I said, no, it's flute. Flute insurance, double reed, clarinets, string bass, you name it. And we attend these shows, get a chance to meet with the people, speak with them, talk about loss mitigation. Sometimes we'll speak on that subject, on how to protect instruments in transport and such, because we see a lot of things that can go bad, albeit with a 20% loss ratio. So we've been able to weather this. And as I had mentioned in our class underwriting approach, I do expect that's going to tick up, but I also expect I'm going to manage that to only increase our loss ratio at worst, maybe up to 25%.
Right.
So, and that's also with growth, and we're growing now faster than we have been, which has been a year over year between 10 to 18% year over year. Mm-hmm. So we've experienced some success in that regard, and it's all been organic growth, which is something that's extremely gratifying to me.
Yeah. Peter, there's 18,000 people insured by Anderson. Did I hear that? 18,000?
That's right.
Do you have any sense of what the market is around the world? Potential?
It's enormous. We're struggling around the world right now, and because we need to create markets where we can better manage those risks. We've got about 1,100 insureds that live outside of the United States, and that's become a problem where we need to redirect that business to an international carrier. So we're working on partnerships in London to help accomplish that, so that we can start writing outside of just the 50 states and have a more acceptable solution for folks where we're fully compliant with the regulations.
Okay. Yeah. Are you up for a quick speed round as we wrap up here?
I can take whatever you throw at me, Peter.
Okay. What's your favorite concert you've ever attended? Not performed in, but attended.
Well, now this is going to be, you're going to be surprised at this one because I've only been to one concert in my life, and that was the Eagles.
See that?
I went to see them around 2008 or something like that at Boston Garden or the Fleet Center, whatever it was called at the time. And I went into the show started at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. There was no warm-up band. It was the Eagles. And at 11:30, I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, I got to go. They were still playing. I have never seen such energy, for 19, 20,000 people at Boston Garden as I experienced there. And that was such a thrill to see that show. I don't like being involved in these kind of scenarios myself unless I'm performing. So from that standpoint, I've not sought out other things, but I do enjoy watching a lot of things on video and taking in some of those experiences that way. But that's the actual only concert I've attended has been that one.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned you learned to play a lot of instruments, but is there one you wish you could play but don't right now?
Okay, so now we're talking about the double reed bassoon. That's the one. Would be the one. Absolutely. It's a magical instrument to me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Artist or composer you'd love to have dinner with, dead or alive? I mean, not you, but
All right, so you may find this interesting because I would say that a composer that I really admire and also detest was Arnold Schoenberg. He wrote 12-tone music in 12-tone, which is atonal, and it's not something that you walk away from listening to and hum the tune as you leave. It's wild stuff and very contemporary, and this is music that he championed back in the early 20th century. But because of that, one of the things that I learned when I was in a couple years of school was that the Beatles also incorporated 12-tone in a lot of their music, and they were disciples of the 12-tone movement, if you will, in contemporary music. So I would have to say, I would love to have the opportunity to talk to McCartney and some of the others, two that have just left, only two left, because their music is really very creative and it used this discipline. But if it was a general conversation, Beethoven or Mahler would be my favorite in that regard, because now they're talking my talk. They're walking the talk and talking the talk with me. I really love their music.
yeah. All right. If you could keep only one, would it be your favorite instrument, the tuba, or would it be your voice, the vocals?
Vocals. I really get involved in listening to some very aggressive choral music and opera here in my home office. It's a regular experience for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So just to put an insurance bow on this, is there a memorable, or shall we say unusual, insurance claim you've dealt with over the years?
How much time do we have, Peter? I could wax on that for a while. But I'll tell you about a couple that really upset me. One was a flute in Hamburg, Germany, that fell off a shelf, and the insured claimed that their $20,000 flute was devalued because it fell and was dented. And he was able to I've been submitted the claim to Hanover Insurance, and I begged them to please allow me to participate in this process, because there's got to be more to this story. Flutes are handmade, and they are something that can easily be repaired. However, they ended up paying a claim almost by return Federal Express mail. They were so eager to get this claim out. If I've ever had a fault with Hanover Claims, it's been they've been too aggressive to pay.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's a positive from that standpoint. But they ended up paying this claim, and a few years later, they came back and they said, I got an appraisal on my flute, and they want to insure it from the $12,000 that we dropped the value to. We have a diminished value endorsement, and I didn't speak about that. But essentially, what that means is if an instrument is damaged, we will pay both the repair of the instrument, plus if there's a devaluation claim, we'll pay for that too. And if we need to have additional appraisals, we'll pay for up to 3. If the second appraisal doesn't agree with the first, we'll pay for a third. And we've had some devaluation claims over the years, not many, but some.
Mhm.
This was one of them. They asked to increase the coverage back, and it didn't happen because I told them that I will never insure that instrument for more than $12,000. They ended up going elsewhere, and God bless them. I'm not interested in insuring people like that. 97% of the people we insure are solid. 3%, well, you know what 3%ers are like in life.
Yeah.
We try to cut off. But another one was someone that had a $140,000 bow that was snapped in a single cardboard container in transport. $140,000. The bow was worthless at this point. You cannot repair a bow. This was a 250-year-old bow with a frog. That's the piece that you actually hold on to at the base of the violin, a bow, and the frog did have a salvage value of about $40,000.
Oh my gosh.
This was, yeah, I know. These numbers are a little staggering, but yeah, we ended up recovering 40,000 and paying 100,000 out. So that one really upset me. I had someone back over tuba. Imagine that.
Back over
someone. How does someone back over tuba in a car? They
not my favorite instrument, the tuba.
and they repaired it as well. That was an interesting one. We've had a string bass that fell off the stage at San Francisco Symphony, where it broke into like 28 pieces. This was a $300,000 or $400,000 bass at the time. This is many years ago, and they actually put it back together. Just like Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
It fell off the stage with the musician, tragically, but thankfully only the bass was injured. But we've had a number of things over the years, yes.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, Peter, it was a real joy to speak with you, and thanks for sharing all your insights. And it's a fascinating world you're in. I wish you all the best. You're doing some cool stuff, my friend.
Well, I'm having fun. You know, as I mentioned, I'm an age denier, but I do admit to being 73. And it seems like, how is this possible? Because I've never been more energized than I am today, albeit with a little bit of a cold. But I really do love what I do. And I also love travel. And I do admit that I do scratch that itch for 2 or 3 months a year, much to the expense of my poor wife, who sometimes gets exhausted following me around. But I work from wherever I am, whatever time zone. It doesn't matter to me. So it's a fun business, and one that I fully intend to continue to expand and build and dominate.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Peter, thanks. Best of luck to you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Peter.
This has been On Point with Peter Van Aartryk, a podcast presentation of Wells Media Group.